Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming here to be able to listen and hear about what God has done through this mission team and what He's doing and continues to do in Liberia. So please join me in prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you for your blessings. We thank you for your safety, for your protection. We thank you for the work that you're doing here at Immanuel and across the world in Liberia. Continue to bless the partnership that we have with Liberian Children's Ministry and bless our talk today. This we pray in Jesus' name. So we're going to begin with Joe giving a little bit of a background and some context, and then we'll introduce the team.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, we thank you for having us here, and we have our team. And we're just going to give you a little content of Liberia, where we went, and what God did through us with the team. Can you help me flip this through, please?
Oh, I know what we didn't do. That's.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. Okay,
There we go.
there we go.
There we go. Liberia, it's in West Africa. It's about 6 million people live in Liberia. And Liberia is one of those African countries, the average income for people working is less than $600 a year. So the poverty is right. Not only that, but in the rural area, about 80% of the children do not go to school. So the literacy rate is very, very high. And not only that, but coming off a war, there's a 16, 17 years of civil war from 1989 until 2003, 2004. And that kind of, and then on top of that, again, you heard about the Ebola that took place in Liberia. So it's very, very much rural area. The Liberian Children Ministry was founded in 2004, and the goal was to help the children in Liberia go to school so that they can learn and most especially hear about Jesus. Currently, we have 20 schools, 20 Lutheran schools with close to 7,000 children in those schools. Many of these children come to our school from homes that they don't know Jesus. We average about 350 children a year that are baptized, brought into God's kingdom, into the Lutheran churches where we have our schools. And Immanuel, I don't have to tell you, but you've been a very blessing to the Liberian Children Ministry because I would say for 12 years, 13 years, you have been part of this ministry. And yes, Liberia, West Africa, population almost 6 million people. And that's the team now. Judy's going to talk a little bit about the team.
Thank you, Joe. So for this mission team, we have, maybe you guys can stand and we also have their picture here, but for the full team. So Joe Bowe, who is he's the founder and the superintendent of those Lutheran schools in the rural jungle areas of Liberia. Laura Dolak, who this is her first time going to Liberia, and so we're really happy and excited to have her as part of this team. And Rachel Keener, who has been a part of the mission team's this is her third time going, and she's been our teacher training lead each of those times that we've had the teacher training workshops. And you will see that we have a few others on our picture that are not here. We have also Kathy and Mike Wakeland. Kathy is a literacy coach, and her husband, Mike, is a pastor. And so they were also part of our team. Kathy and Mike go to Joe's church in Fort Wayne. And obviously the three of us are here from Immanuel. And then we have Lisa Pudell. Raise your hand, Lisa. Lisa also has been a huge part of our team, very involved in all of the planning, the development, the resourcing. Lisa is from Trinity Roselle. Unfortunately, due to some health issues, she was not able to travel with us this time, but we hope in the next time. But so this was a great team. We wanted to bring other churches in. We've been doing this for a while, and we thought it would be helpful to kind of expand that and have others be more exposed to the types of workshops and trainings that we do there. And perhaps those churches could then be more involved with this in the future. So this shows our flights. It's kind of fun. Laura put this together. O'Hare, and then we flew to Washington, D.C., then to Brussels, then to Sierra Leone, and then to Monrovia. But then we took the Cessna over the rainforest, and then all back again. Took us about 31 hours to get there this time because we had some extra stops. That was due to budgets. It was more cost effective to kind of add that in, but some of the stopping in DC and such. So, but it's a long way to get there. This is the Cessna that we fly over the rainforest with, and it's really an exciting and cool thing because you're not as high up as in a commercial airline. You're looking down, and just being able to see the rainforest and everything below is just amazing and a wonderful experience. So, as with almost every mission trip, there are unexpected things that happen that you need to pivot, need to adjust, and this trip was no different. We had sent 12 large boxes of teaching supplies on the barge that Joe sends over to Liberia. We had all kinds of resources for the teachers, for the teacher training workshops. They made it to Liberia, but somehow did not make it to our teaching site. 12 boxes of materials that we had planned to use. Fortunately, the handouts and the some of the anchor texts we brought along with us. Praise God, because we did have those. So we had to stop and think, okay, now what are we going to do and how are we going to handle that? So those were some of the things that we had to think through and do. The other thing that was a challenge was we normally teach in a large room. It's, let's say it's this size, and it would allow for the number of teachers that we've had, like about 115 teachers, but then also would allow for us to break into small groups and have small group discussions. We had planned for all of this. Well, the government decided to do student testing in the church where we were going to be teaching. So we were not able to use that for most of the days. We were in a space that was probably half the size, a third of the size of what we had planned. Not much ventilation, not many fans, a couple little fans in the ceiling, that's it. Everyone packed into this very tight, very hot, again, it's very hot, very humid in Liberia. So very, tight space. So this team had to make a number of adjustments. And I have to say, I'm so impressed with not just the ability to adjust and, okay, well, let's try this. How about this? Brainstorm, figure out what other options that we would have and what we could do, but with a real positive attitude. Because it's easy to be like getting frustrated or annoyed, but instead it was like, okay, what do we do next? This is the picture of the team readjusting and figuring out and replanning what we would be doing next.
Judy,
Yes.
did those 12 boxes ever turn up anywhere?
No.
Yes.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. They
Yeah.
will.
So as a new member on the team and not a teacher and not the team leader, I needed a focus. And so what I decided on initially was in helping our team get to know the teachers who were attending the workshop. So I thought we could accomplish that in a number of ways through name tags and maps. So these are simple measures, but the name tags, we had the teachers write their names and schools they were from and subjects they taught. And then they would wear that name tag and I'd take their picture while they were wearing the name tag so we could put like names with faces. And then we would use the map of all the schools to put names and faces with places. So I was lucky on this trip. We were we had this extra event scheduled we've never had before, called a meet and greet. And so that happened the night before the workshop started. And we had all the teachers show up, and here's a picture of them writing their name tags. And then we had this big blow up of the map, and they came up and talked about where they were from. And you can see where these schools are. There's over 20 Lutheran schools. We had a couple of guest schools attend the workshop. All of them are inland, like in the jungle part of Liberia. Most of them are concentrated like in Granjetta, which is the county Joe is from, and a couple of adjacent counties. But then there's some from like way far north, up in Lofa. And those teachers really had a haul. They came on like motorbikes through the jungles, and just for scale, Liberia is about the size of Tennessee. But our attendance was good. These are the teachers I managed to photograph. We had 114 shown here. There were a handful that escaped the camera's lens. We estimate about 120 overall attendance. So that's how many we had crammed into our little classroom. And now Rachel's going to talk about what the workshop was like.
I just have to add something to the meet and greet that illustrates for you what it's like to be in Liberia and to work with Liberian people. So we're doing this meet and greet. There's all these people in the sanctuary, and it starts to rain because it's the rainy season. And it was rain like you've not experienced here, and it was also on a roof where it was like thunderously loud. So this happened while they were coming up by school and introducing themselves to us. They didn't miss a beat. They didn't pause. They just kept going. Like, we literally couldn't hear them, but they're just like, okay, yep, totally fine, totally normal, we're moving on. You know, so I just love, there are so many examples like that where, you know, when you live in a place with more uncertainty, you become very flexible. And I think that's a great thing. So this was also really awesome and helpful to have the meet and greet. Pastor Mike did an amazing job of starting us out with devotions every morning, and his wife Kathy was on our teaching team, and so he also was a little more privy to our teaching plans, and so he planned these beautiful devotions that dovetailed really, really nicely with what we'd be talking about each day. As Judy mentioned, we had a bit of a venue change, which we were, of course, very worried about because you can't really see it very well in this particular picture because not everyone is there. But that's the size of the room, and then put 120 people in there. So it was literally shoulder to shoulder. So there was one aisle down the center, and the blackboard was like right here, and like that's the amount of space we had for our presentation, and then we couldn't move around the room. But everything that we do when we do our teacher workshops, for them, we try to make sure that everything, we can get as many things as they can apply to their context as possible. And they told us, you know, some of them have 100 students in their classrooms. Like there was a preschool teacher there who had 100 students in her classroom. So we were able to talk about that, and like this is what it's like to be your students. So now let's think about what we can do to help our instruction and help them learn better and be able to talk to each other. What does it look like to do that? And they were amazing at engaging in those conversations. As usual, all three of our teacher workshops have been focused on literacy education. That's the most important, fundamental, and the most impactful for them in their context. So we talked about comprehension strategies, did some reviewing from what we have done before. So it was really awesome to get a progression. We also we brought with us 2 different anchor texts that we connected all of our teaching to. If you're not familiar with that term, an anchor text is a text that you would use in your classroom. You would read it to the students, but it's like the foundation for your lesson, and all of the other learning that you do is connected to that, and it helps the students to learn it better. So we did that with them, where we did activities related to and how you could use this text in your classroom. So the two anchor texts, one, we found a Liberian author who made this amazing, he's written down a lot of traditional folktales, and this amazing funny story called Mrs. Chicken and the Hungry Crocodile, and they loved that. But it was really impactful to be able to talk about the fact that it was a Liberian author. And in our workshops, then we were able to spend a day and connect it to writing and students writing and empowering Liberian authors. Oh, we had, the second anchor text that we brought was called One Plastic Bag, which is a true story. It's based on a true story about a woman in the Gambia, which is not terribly far away from them. And so the context of that book was very familiar to them. And it was older, geared towards older students with a higher rating level. So we were able to, because we had teachers there even who taught high school, right? So we have teachers from preschool all the way up through, and many different subjects as well. So we were able to talk about we dug into some lesson planning practice. We also talked a lot about connecting literacy to other subject matters because they tend to do things more separately. So they were amazing, and we had really, really great discussions. You'll see we were still able to do some small group discussions in that room, and they worked with the materials. They were so eager and engaged. Oh, sorry. I thought that was going to press play.
If you just just forward it next time.
Okay.
Okay, so we've just forwarded to start the video.
Yes, there were in the very first, you're noticing a difference from our previous workshops. So we had, the very first workshop that we did was focused on early childhood teachers. And in Liberia, those are almost entirely women. It's actually not that dissimilar from here. And then, but we expanded that, and Joe invited more teachers. So there was about 60% of the teachers were actually elementary school and high school teachers, and many of them were men. So they are practicing techniques and getting ready to use these anchor texts in their classroom. Yes, so we'll talk about that in a second, but we brought enough so that every school got a copy of each of the anchor texts, as well as a bunch of other materials. We also were able to do some adapting and break out into differentiated sessions, because we didn't know we would have such a wide range of teacher, like what they teach for their age. So we did separate for several sessions for early childhood teachers and elementary school teachers, so we were able to dig in a little bit more to things that were specific to them. All right.
That would be the next.
And that's the early childhood teacher breakout session. This is actually in their early childhood building that they have built, and they have this kind of like patio area in the front, and it was the only other like large space that we could find. So there were some goats in there before the session started, but they shooed them out before we were. And then, as always in everything we do, Joe always stresses that Christ is the head of our schools, and you can really feel that mission-driven sense there for them. It's really energizing. It's really exciting. It feels very similar to talking to Lutheran teachers here, right? And so that was a wonderful thing that we could connect about.
So one of the things new thing that we did for the teacher workshops this time was assessing all of the teachers for the need for reading glasses. We had started doing it with the sewing workshops, but those we're talking about, 15 folks for that. But we realized if you can't see, you can't sew. It's really hard to teach or read. And so we brought a lot of reading glasses with us and went through the whole group. So interestingly enough, of the, let's say, 120 that were assessed, almost 100 needed reading glasses. Even some of the younger people, which surprised me, I'm guessing, we were wondering, speculating that perhaps it's because they're used to being in dim lighting. They don't have electricity in their classrooms. And so they, probably have more eye strain than what we would have with electricity and such. And so they got reading glasses, a glasses case, and like a cleaning cloth, each of them. We trained them on how to use reading glasses, the whole on and off type of thing. And because they see some of us wearing glasses all the time and had to explain the differences and such. But this was a full service opportunity too, because you have Laura here who is teaching this gentleman in French on how to use his reading glasses, because Pacom's main language is French. And so we went through all of them and did that. And then we did that on the first day, so then they could use the reading glasses during the workshop and get used to them, and we could kind of remind them. Or maybe if they said, this one doesn't feel right, can you retest me? So we were able to, make some tweaks and such. But they were very well received. We had one teacher so we would assess them, give them a choice of style and their strength. They put it on, and then we give them something to read. And to see their faces light up and just like, oh my gosh, like the difference that they could see with, and we're just so excited and so appreciative. And one of the teachers, the women, just looked and said, oh my gosh, I can read my Bible again. And we're like, praise God. And so this is definitely something we'll continue to do. We talked about the bumps in the road, the 12 boxes of resources that never made it, still not sure where they are. They never made it to where they should have been. That happens in Liberia. We were praying about it, trying to figure that out. We went into a storage room in this school and church, and we're looking through, and we found some boxes that were in terrible shape, moldy, mouse dirt, really dirty. We were kind of going through, trying to sift through, see if we could salvage things. There wasn't much there. Honestly, I just kept praying and praying and praying, God, multiply these resources so everyone could have something. Just kept praying. That was through my head the whole time as we're kind of cleaning these books and looking for more and such. And I'll be honest, I just kept looking, thinking, this isn't going to be enough. It's not going to be enough. We have to have something to give to everyone. You can't, in Liberia, give something to some and not all. So I just kept praying and praying, and I don't know how it happened, but God multiplied the resources. Somehow, some way, we had enough. You see here, we created a little book distribution store. The early childhood teachers all received a reading text that they, again, were taught on how to be able to use this in multiple ways in their classrooms. They were so excited, and they got to choose which one they wanted, which would work best for them. That's why we had the store for them to go through. And then for the teachers of the older grades, they were able to choose 3 picture books that would work for them. And there was a range of ages. And again, we were just finding books from anywhere. We had brought a stack of books to just like read to kids in the community and such. We threw those in the mix. I mean, we were just, scrounging for anything. And then we also had the principals come in on behalf of each of the schools, and they got to each receive one of the anchor texts, and those are pictured here. That's the one plastic bag and the Mrs. Chicken, the Hungry Crocodile. So each school received that, plus they received one of these big reader books. And then we realized we still had more. and not quite enough for everyone. So we had a drawing on the last day. And it was so fun because Laura had taken all these pictures of the teachers, and so she would spin the wheel on her phone and stop on a picture and zoom in the name tag for Joe to read it out loud, and I would be holding up, so they had an option. They could choose either one of the big picture books or maybe 3 small books. So they'd be like, that one. So we're handing them out and such. Probably about half the teachers got additional resources. And we just kept, Laura goes, you just kept pulling more and more out of the bin. I mean, I just truly feel that God multiplied those resources because I did not think that we would have enough, let alone an abundance. So God provides, and that's what we see over and over again when we're there in Liberia. We see God at work. We see his hand in things. When you have few resources and you can't just say, oh, I'll just put an order on Amazon, we'll get them in the morning. We become more dependent on him, and we see him in action. I'm not saying he's not in action here, but it's so evident there because there are so few resources.
I love these pictures. I think I need to attribute them. Judy took the one on the left and Rachel took the one on the right. But these are kids of the teachers that were attending the workshops. And so on the left there was a rug down just for kids to play in the workshop space while the workshop was happening. And then here on the right, this was after the workshop was over, but this is one of those boxes of books that was kind of nasty, but this one was, she was having a great time, and the older kids were pushing her around like it was a sled, and yeah, I think the picture says it all. We also had this group of kids, this handful, that we affectionately termed the pep squad. When our car pulled in, they were ready to go. They attached themselves to us like glue, and they would stay with us the whole day if we let them. But we were able to say, okay, we need to go do adult things now, because in Liberia, children are not given the importance that adults are, so they're used to that sort of treatment. But whatever we could give them, they absolutely loved. And so we took some of those books we had brought for the community kids, and here I'm reading to them, and I read them 4 books during this session, and they told me their favorite one was Owl Moon, which is funny because that has a snowy setting, and likely none of these kids have ever seen snow in their life or interacted with it, so that was kind of funny. And then I also thought it was funny, this boy in the middle is wearing a shirt from the movie Frozen that says, "Do you want to build a snowman?" But we had a lot of fun. You see Pastor Mike interacting with them. He had a great way with them, just doing some hand games. They like to help me out. This girl on top in the red would always, every time I took something out of my purse, it was her job to buckle my purse for me. And then Pastor Mike had the kids going with him to get groups of teachers to take them to the bookstore. So there was always this parade of kids going back and forth, and they helped out a lot. This is just to give you an idea of what the worship service was like. We had 2 worship services on the Sunday that fell between workshops day 1 and 2. It was also Rachel's birthday. We saw 18 baptisms at this first worship service that we all went to. So there's a picture of Pastor Mike baptizing them. And then there was, the teaching team really had to pivot and spend some time planning that afternoon. But I was free to go with Pastor Mike to another town called Zlaytown. You can see where Zlaytown is relative to Zwedru. This cluster of schools is Zwedru. And to get to Zlaytown, Zlaytown's this orange dot. We went parallel to the border, Liberia's border with the Ivory Coast, or Côte d'Ivoire in French. But the road there was interesting. So you'll see, we were driving behind this truck most of the time, and there's a lot of red dirt on the truck, and I was thankful that it was rainy season because the moisture kept that dust from being in the air for us to breathe. And I was enjoying the jungle plants. I forgot what this plant is called. I think it's native to South America actually, and it's an invasive species in Africa, but I was really enjoying it. So just some neat stuff to see in the rainforest. This is another lively worship service that we got to see. I'm going to let you watch a little bit of this. And they put Pastor Mike to work right away. They I had him sign 30 baptism certificates. So there he is, getting carpal tunnel syndrome. And you know, just now this I had to speed up. He did 30 baptisms at this church. We had a bunch from the town of Slaytown and also Town nearby, and so 30 baptisms. It took him 11 minutes. I sped it up, so you're going to see 30 BPM or baptisms per minute. Don't blink or you'll miss one. We thought this guy with the towel was hilarious because he was using the same towel for every child. And you'll see they don't really lean over the font, so pastors like splashing the water on them. And there were some little ones, some tall ones, and there were some carried by their parents as they're coming up. Playing a salsa at some point. That was a teacher that came to the workshop. I recognized him. There's the salsa. There's Pastor Cooper, and that's the end. Pastor Cooper was the pastor at that church. And so then we took a photo of all the baptism banners afterwards. We had a huge celebration, and Joe did a great job making the kids feel special and like have a wonderful memory. He piled as many of as would fit, which was a surprisingly huge number of kids, into this Toyota Highlander that was donated by Lisa's church, Trinity Roselle. And that thing we used for our transportation the whole week, and it worked like a dream. We were so thankful for that. And it was just, its capacity was impressive. And you'll also see its ability to handle roads is impressive. I'll show that later. And then also Pastor Cooper's wife made a meal for Joe and Pastor Mike and me, and it was cassava greens, which I was really hoping to try. And so I'm glad that I got a meal that had that, cassava greens with fish over rice. It was great. We went through the village a little bit. Joe met up with his cousins and talked with them, and we got to observe the kids playing. And it was just kind of cool, some of the things they did. They made these little motorbikes. Like out of, I don't know what that is, it's okra or cactus or something, and then they were pushing them through this maze they had made in the dirt. And I just put a picture of a cute dog. I like that dog. I call this a boy who harnessed the wind, because this kid made a pinwheel out of a palm leaf. And he just loved that I was filming him, and he was proud of it.
Nice.
His friend has
Good
a
job.
crown made out of palm leaves. Just some of the things they come up with. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears and talk about the other jungle town we visited. And this one our whole team went to after the workshop was over. And this is called Janzon. It's much closer to the Ivory Coast. So we're driving from this cluster of schools in Zouadrou straight towards the Ivory Coast, where people speak French. And that's where our French-speaking teacher was from. The drive was really harrowing, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna watch this whole thing, but can you imagine that car getting over? Do you see the cross-section of that road? It looks like some crazy cubic function. Joe's driving.
We all got out. He's a certified driver.
We tried both ways. One way we rode in the car with him, and then another way we thought it might be better if we got out. But I don't know. I think maybe we needed some more friction. So it would have been better if we were in the car with him.
When we got out, just for some scale, when we got out and walked ahead on the road, like that divot in the middle there, it was like up to here on us. So like it's like huge. Like
Here's a scale figure walking by, so you can see how tall. And I'm doing a bad job with the camera, maybe, but anyway, yeah, there's the wheel spinning. And we're like cheering like it's some kind of sporting event.
We're totally not even videotaping. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
should be on a commercial film.
I'm gonna have to, yes, exactly. I'm gonna have to leave you in suspense in the interest of time.
We made it.
Yeah, we made it. But then we arrived at Janzan. Our first stop was the church, and the church was made of dirt, but it had a rustic beauty. They had like flowers lining the doorways. They had these triangular windows that may be evoking the Trinity. They had musical instruments hanging from the ceiling, and cute kids and dogs in the church. And then we walked in, and the church was full of people, and they were all sitting there waiting to welcome us. And they had us sit up in the front, and we all introduced ourselves, and then they introduced themselves and welcomed us to their town. And then they gave us a chicken and some pineapples, and then we all danced, and we went outside and took this picture. And then they gave us a tour of the rest of their town. So that was the most amazing, hospitable welcome ever. It was rainy season in Liberia as we toured the town, and so it was kind of fun to have a collection of animals taking shelter in the rain. Here's like a bird under a tree, here's a cow under an eave, some goats under another eave, and then we took shelter under a porch. And as we were under that porch, we noticed the guardrail on the porch had some hoof prints on it from like maybe a goat walked on it while the concrete was wet. It's kind of neat. We took a car then to the end of town and saw the hospital, and the hospital turned out to be more significant than we even realized while we were there, because the Vacation Bible School that started that week raised enough money for not 2, but 3 fetal Dopplers, and that third one ended up going to this hospital. And they have no doctor on staff, just a nurse, a couple of midwives, an administrator, and there's clearly some goats too. We visited their school, and their school is made of dirt. We have Trefena, one of the workshop teachers, in front of her classroom. We have Pacome showing us the French classroom. We have a classroom that's got a stack of bricks in it that hopefully will be used someday to build a permanent school. And then these are the French teachers in the entire Liberian Children's Ministry. We have Pacome on the left, who is the one in Janzan. And then we just call her Madame, is the one that teaches in Zwedru. And Pacome told me he would like some books that are French on one side and English on the other. So I did find a bunch of parallel textbooks that I'm going to give to Joe today, but we have the NIV Bible coupled with the Sower's Bible in French, and a kid's Bible, and short stories for fiction, and fun facts for nonfiction. Fiction, nonfiction was one of the topics covered in the workshop, so good to include both. So after Janzan, we went to Zwedru and saw some friends there. Judy's, or someone's talking, Rachel's talking about that.
Yeah, there's no hospitality I've experienced quite like what you experienced in Liberia. And on that note, it was absolutely wonderful to go and spend some time with people that we have met there. And for some of you, Laura got to meet them for the first time, but we were able to go a couple of times over to Pastor Doy's house. You heard us, if you were in church this morning, you heard us pray for him. His sister has passed away, but we have stayed with that family in the past. The other 2 trips that we've gone on, we've stayed with them, and so we've gotten to know them well. He has several grandchildren that live with him. You'll see there, and that's his wife. And it was lovely to be able to build, and I'm borrowing from my reflection at the end a little bit, but it was really impactful, the building of relationships. So for me, this was my 3rd time and visiting, and it felt like visiting old friends and family, right? You know, some of the grandkids were different, but most of the people, you know, were the same. This is baby Joe, and he's named after Joe. So he's seriously adorable. That's Pastor Joey at the bottom there. And we just got to spend some time with the kids and relate, and we even saw you know, one of the neighbor children that we had seen and gotten to know very well the very first time that we went. We saw him again, and he's like grown, but he remembered us, and he remembered the book that we left him and the Bible verse that was written inside, and he still has the things that we gave him, and he was just so excited to see us again. So We also got to, one of the really awesome things that we did on this trip was we got to connect in Monrovia. When we went back to the capital city, we got to connect with an organization called We Care Foundation. It's a non-government organization, not-for-profit. This is Mike. He is Liberian. He's the one who founded this organization, and they do literacy education. So we were really, really excited to connect with them, and we got to visit their location. They have been working to provide free libraries, distribute books, do teacher training, help students who maybe have to miss some school catch up, and improve literacy rates in Liberia. And we thought it would obviously be great to connect with them. But when we actually went, and you'll see for the Little Free Library fans, we have we have one. This is a Little Free Library that they have at their location there. One of the other things that they do that's amazing is that they empower Liberian authors, and they publish stories written by Liberian authors and illustrators, and distribute those to the school. So I'm sure you're already thinking about all the possibilities for things that we can do to help give more resources. Believe me, we were already thinking about that as well. One of the really great things about going and visiting there was to see, to hear their perspective. They've been doing this since the 80s. It's like since the Civil War started. And they've developed over time and expanded what they do. And it was amazing because there was so much overlap, just such a great harmony in terms of the vision for Liberia and what's possible there, and for teacher training between our teams and what we have been, the work we've been trying to do there with that, and them. And so that was really cool because, we've been asking God this whole time, like every single step of the way, we're like, okay, how do we do this best, right? And so it was really, really cool to see an organization that is doing that, has been so successful, that is doing some things in a very similar way.
Joe, did you have anything you wanted to share about in the future, any future connections?
Well, we're trying to work with them so that they can train some of our teachers. But for this academic year that starts next month, it's too late to get into their program. So from now until probably February or March, we will get people into their program so that the following school year they can train the teachers to do what they do in our school. So that's what we're working on.
It was amazing because we were talking about different ideas and how we could partner with them. And, after we had met them, we were so excited. And then I went in my room and I got a message, a WhatsApp, because that's international, from a friend, a previous team member, who was saying, I know you're going to be going to this organization and learning. We would like to provide this amount of money to help train these teachers to be able to go and make that happen. Here we've been brainstorming about what we could do, and God was already providing the foundation and the funding for it. So it was an amazing visit, and really wonderful to be able to make those connections. This trip was 16 days, which is the longest that we've ever done. And the reason that we stayed longer was because it was cheaper, believe it or not. And so to be cost effective, we stayed longer. But we made good use of that time, and with the We Care Foundation, once we were back in Monrovia, we did various things. And one of the things I always try to have the team do is to worship at St. Peter. If you've been in our presentations before, you have heard us talk about St. Peter's Lutheran Church. During the Civil War in 1990-ish, there was a massacre inside this church. There were 600 men, women, and children who were murdered inside this church because they were there seeking refuge. And so that's one of the horrific stories. There are many, many, many horrific stories during the Civil War. The star that you see in front of the church is one of the mass graves from those who had been murdered. It's right in the church parking lot in the playground space. There's two, one for men, one for women and children. So I feel it's important for us to go there when we're able because it's such a big part of the history. But also St. Peter's was where the women's peace movement began. And that's what helped end the war. And so, I mean, it was God working through this women's movement and in other ways, but so it's a very meaningful place to be. It also has beautiful worship. So this is a different tribe. That was a different tribe than when we're in Zwedru. We're with folks who are from the Kron tribe. That's Joe's tribe, and so they speak the Kron language. This was the Pele tribe, and so it was interesting to hear their language, the differences, and also how they dance differently. They all dance and worship. We worship so many times in so many ways because that's what they do there, and it's so beautiful and so wonderful. In this same worship service, this is a gospel choir that they also had. Kind of similar to a gospel choir that we would have here. So this particular service at St. Peter's Lutheran lasted 3.5 hours. And that's not typical. Usually they're about 2 hours, which we kind of plan for and know to expect. But because it was Father's Day, they had probably an additional hour of Father of the Year. And you can see the Father of the Year. Think beauty pageant. He was crowned Father by the Year. Father of the Year. He had the sash, and people were pinning flowers on him. He gave a speech. People gave a speech about him. All the men in the congregation sat together from this men's auxiliary. It was really cool to see culturally how they were really uplifting fathers and talking about these the scriptural role of a father. And so that was a big part of the message. As part of that service. So that was a unique cultural thing that we got to experience too. Since we had our extra days, we went and hung out at Tropicana Resort for the day. It's not too far from where we stay. We stay at the Lutheran compound. That's where we stayed this time. And when we're in Monrovia. And so to be able to have a day to relax and recover, this is hard work. These are hard conditions. And it's hard mental work, emotional, and physical. And so to have a day to just kind of recover, especially for such a long trip, it was critical and very well received and appreciated. One of the other things that we did during those extra days in Monrovia was we connected up with other organizations, Lutheran organizations that are there doing things, and be able to get the direct message about what's going on. So this is Becky Grossman from Lutheran Bible Translators. She has been working in Liberia. She also lives in the U.S., so she goes back and forth more now because she's been there for decades and decades working with LBT. She used to work with Joe at LBT, how many years ago? 30 years ago? Long time ago. And so Becky has been this continuous presence with LBT in Liberia. Amazingly enough, when we're in Michigan, we go to this small little church, Lutheran church, and Becky's a member there, and we got to meet each other, and so we've become friends, and we've figured out that we were going to both be in Liberia at the same time, so she got to connect up with our team. We got to go out to eat and share about what we had been doing and hear more about what she's been doing, and it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating to hear about Lutheran Bible Translators' work. Also, Orphan Grain Train, you've probably heard of them. They send so many supplies over there. This is just some of them. Look at all those boxes. And Joe was going to be coordinating, after we left, coordinating those boxes to be shipped to the various schools and churches, along the way there. A lot of food packets you can see here that are distributed to the children. This is a mat that had been woven out of plastic bags. There's blankets, there's clothes, fabric they send to the sewing sites that we had established. And so it was also interesting to see that in play. We always attend markets and the National Museum to have, again, more of that cultural understanding and historical understanding. And we also visited the Wildlife Sanctuary, which we got to do last time too. And that's interesting to hear the work that they're doing in helping animals be re-released into the rainforest who had been poached and such. So I'd like to take a time when we're going to have the team come forward. And Rachel, if you can start, and then Joe. I asked the team to come up with some reflection about their time and what it was like for them.
So yeah, G asked us to think about something that was personally meaningful for us in this trip. So it was just very hard, just like one thing. But when I was thinking about it, I really thought, for me, I think for this trip, there was a real sense of the impact of continuous involvement. Because this is my third trip, I've been able to see progress. When we had conversations with the teachers, then it's crazy to think that they would not have, teacher training for 3 years and still be able to remember and talk to you about the content that was, that we discussed last time. That's not something we experience here, right? So, but it's so meaningful for them, and to see so many teachers and administrators that I knew, and they were excited to see me, and they were excited to talk to me about what God's doing in their schools. We also, I was able to have a little session with about 20 teachers that were here this time, were also attended our conferences last time. And we distributed some resources last time, and so I wanted to talk with them, in interest of future planning, about the resources that they received, how things are going, also the type of content, and it was so amazing. All 20 of them still had the resources. They were this prized possession that they, took very good care of themselves. They used it in their classroom all the time. And then I asked, tell me about how you use it. And they were telling me all of these things that they had learned and figured out themselves just from using the materials that we had provided, and also the content knowledge that we had provided, and ways they were learning from each other. And then we had some discussions too amongst schools about how to best kind of help those things grow in the schools. So it was incredible. It was incredible. And it made me think about, the very first time that I went, the first couple of days that we were there in the capital city, I had never been to a country with so much poverty before. And it was overwhelming. And I think that it is something that we experience, in our comfortable lives here. When we hear about situations that are so different, we see pictures, we immediately think about the differences, right? And we immediately go, oh my God, tragedy, right? And that's not bad, but something that Joe told me when I was there was just that, don't let it break your heart. And I was like, how is that possible? And he said, don't let it break your heart, because God is at work in Liberia. And you ask God to show you how he's working in Liberia. And it was so cool to be able to see this time, I could see that. I wasn't overwhelmed by the tragedy or the poverty. I saw people who are working hard and who are on the same mission that we are on, and it was amazing. So I highly encourage you to get involved over the long term in a project here.
Thank you, Rachel. There are so many things I can tell you about, but two, having a good teacher like this and a coordinator that put everything together, and a photographer that did lots of things, and to see 120 teachers come together, and I get called from Liberia still telling me how much they appreciate it. And also, it brings tears to my heart, to my eyes for joy. Not that I'm sad, but it just to see 48 boys and girls, young people brought into God's kingdom through holy baptism on one Sunday while we were there. 300 plus boys and girls are baptized every year. Laura was able to see it all, and she photographed it and videotaped it. But this is what our ministry is all about: sharing the love of Jesus with children and their parents, and the Holy Spirit bringing them into God's kingdom. That's why you pray for. That's why you give money for. That's why you send people for. We can do everything we can do. Build school, train teachers. Nothing wrong with that. But if those children don't hear the gospel, don't hear about Jesus, I don't think we have done anything. So thank you. Thank you for working with the teachers so those teachers can share Jesus with the children, so the Holy Spirit can bring them into God's kingdom. That's my most impression. Thank you.
For me, I have pictures I was going to show. So for this trip, when we were on our way there, my stepdad died. And I found out once we got there. I had seen him a couple of days before. We had had some great spiritual talks. We were in a good place. I talked with my mom that if he passed away while I was gone, that I would not go home. I was surprised that it happened so quickly, just 3 days after I had seen him, because he's sitting at the kitchen table laughing and being silly and such. And so he was in hospice, so it wasn't completely unexpected, but the timing was not what we expected. So to be on the other end of the world, when my family's gathering for a wake, a funeral, to be there feeling alone, grieving, the team was a great support, but it was really hard for me. In addition, this was also the time when I found out he passed away. I had a friend who was going through 12 hours of surgery, a major, major surgery, and that's when we found out that the supplies hadn't made it, and that we were going to be in the, this really small classroom, and so it was very, very overwhelming. There were people here that I just started, some of you here, just started emailing and saying, we need prayers. I need prayers. This is what's going on. And I thank you for being there for us, for all of you who prayed, even through the calendar, maybe didn't know all those specific things. But what was so cool for me is that, as the team leader, this is my 5th time leading a mission team to Liberia. And I've gotten to know these people. They're wonderful friends. They're like family to us. And as the planner and the leader, I'm always thinking of, how can we serve? How can we serve? But they serve us in so many ways. And we are blessed in so many ways. This group of ladies, they're the ones that make the lunches for the teachers. And so they weren't in the workshop. I'd gone into the courtyard and I was crying, I was talking to a family member on the phone, and they were kind of across the courtyard getting ready for lunch and doing all these things. And again, I know, most of them from previous times. And one by one, they came over to me and just like, are you okay? What happened? What's wrong? And then they ministered to me. They, with hugs and just listening ear, and just took me in. And it was, I think of the interdependency that we talk about here at Immanuel all the time, right? And so we go there to serve, and yet we're served, and here to go and just have them. Here I was going in a very weak place. I'm the leader, I'm supposed to be the one with the clear mind and be able to make the decisions as these, curveballs are thrown our way. And yet the team stepped up when I was, dealing with my own personal grief. And God sent wonderful ladies to be there for me, to minister to me. And so that was so precious and so wonderful to have that. And the other God thing Laura referenced, while we were there in Liberia, the children here were doing a vacation Bible school on the rainforest, and we created videos about the rainforest. We're sending them back, so they're watching and learning about the rainforest from us in the rainforest. It was so cool. And from our January team, we had met with a midwife and found out this need for fetal Dopplers. And so we had planned to raise enough money to get 2 of them because we knew these midwives in these 2 clinics, and we were excited about that. And then God provided through VBS 3. We just didn't expect that, didn't even plan for that. And yet, as Laura had said, while we were there, we had visited another clinic, a 3rd one, that never thought that we would have another connection to them. And so just to see God's hand and to see him at work, to be able to provide now a fetal Doppler for this 3rd place that we had visited, and we got to know these people and got to be there, a part of that village. It was just very, very special.
Thanks, Judy. This slide will be distracting for a little bit, but I'm just going to talk about how God changed me. Over the last decade, he's been showing me, and I feel like this trip was really the exclamation point, that when I'm making big decisions about what to do, it's more important to answer the questions, who am I partnering with, and how is God using them? And those 2 questions are so important. And so as opposed to, for example, like how is God going to use me specifically? Because God has a way of showing me as I go. And here, who am I with? This team is amazing. Joe Bowe's ministry, Liberian Children's Ministry, Joe Bowe himself, the teachers there were amazing people. And it was just an honor to work with them. And then what is God doing? Spreading literacy, spreading the gospel. I mean, it doesn't get more important than that. And then I just wanted to end with just some coincidences in time, some things that dovetailed nicely with our trip. My son Andrew was confirmed the month before, and the verse he chose all on his own was, "Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit," Matthew 28:19. And then during the trip, as we mentioned, we were sending messages about the rainforest to the VBS kids, and Soren was there helping, and Matthew, my son, was there participating, and I got to come back in time for their last day and take this picture, and he's with his best friend, Michael Deppner, and the only school these 2 had together was the kindergarten class that Rachel taught, but they're still best friends going into 4th grade. And then just something happening starting tomorrow. Like, I just came back from my first mission trip to Africa, and starting tomorrow, my workplace is embarking on its first mission trip to Africa. So we have 3 coworkers. Melissa's leaving tomorrow. Susan and Dan are going over later, but they're going to the largest refugee camp in the world, in Kakuma, northern Kenya. And so they've invited me to give this presentation to them as a lunch talk when they get back, and we'll trade notes and learn from each other. So I'm thrilled. Oh, and I do have more profound things to say, but I couldn't say them here. So please, everybody, take something. This is probably the best thing I've ever written, so if you can take one, that'd be great. I'll just distribute them, so you don't have to feel like you should come up here.
I know we're over time, and I apologize for that, but are there any questions that we could answer? Thank you for your support, because we can't do it alone, as we're saying. It takes this village to send us to that village.
We'd like you to take back to that church attack where 600 people were killed.
Yes.
Is that like something religious-based attack?
It was a tribal, so during the Civil War, there were different tribes and different warlords and different camps, there were presidential coups and all kinds of stuff. So yes, they were specific tribe that was hiding in there, and they were all
But
killed.
it wasn't religious-based? Oh.
Not really. It wasn't. It had nothing to do with the church. That just happened to be where they were. They weren't like Lutherans in the church worshiping. These were people hiding because they were being sought after to be killed, and they were hiding there. Yes, Bill?
Is there any specific thing that we could finance through free will donations that is most important right now? Like we're talking about those top part.
Right, thank you for that. We will think about that and get back to you. but unless Joe has something offhand, but Joe it was asked about. Joe's like, is there some specific project that could be financed?
Well, there's always project depending on what God is doing through us, through you. But one thing is to run all these schools with 7,000 kids. It takes about $120,000 a year to run these 20 schools, and God has blessed us, blessed me and you to raise that $120,000 a year. So if people want to give towards that, that'll be fine. It costs $25 for a child to go to school for a year, and it costs average of $60 to $75 for a teacher pay per month. So all that God has to provide it through you, through me, and through other people. So we always need donation and prayer and whatever you. Thank you.
So you could make donations specifically to Liberian Children's Ministry, to their organization. And it is amazing that you can educate a child for $25 for a whole year. So if you have any interest in being in a future team, doesn't have to be Liberia, but just we're also developing some teams that'll be closer by. Come talk to me, let me know, just so I can get you on my radar and for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll be around here if you have gone to the first service and you want to stay around and ask questions. We'll be here for a few minutes.